Nehemiah chapter 1, when we were in chapter 1, it says there that the wall of Jerusalem was broke down, okay? And the point being is they're in disarray. The people are in disarray, and because of that, the enemy is able to attack this city repeatedly. And so they're in shame, and that is like something that the enemy wants, okay? And so Nehemiah hears of it, and he knows that God is a God of restoration, and he prays according to God's word that God is going to restore, okay? And so, like I said, but for people online, it says in the New Testament, Jesus talking about who God is that he came that we could have life and that more abundantly, that we can have a life that is one that thrives and knows the goodness of God in all aspects of our life, in our individual life, in our family life, in our community, in our church. And on the opposite of that, like the juxtaposition is that Satan, he's against that. This broken down wall is an example of that. Like he digs that sort of thing because he wants us to be a way, a means by which he can continually attack us and break us down, because the New Testament says that he, our adversary, came to kill, to steal, and destroy. That's his mission, and it's the flip opposite of what God wants in your life. But if you understand if you're a person of God and you've come to know God, then you know you're going to be a part of just his work in people's lives to restore, to rebuild, to see the goodness of God become a reality in their lives, okay? But you also need to understand that there's going to be opposition to that, and so we're going to touch on that tonight. And so getting into chapter 2 of Nehemiah, verse 1 through 2, it says, "It came to pass in the month of Nisan," this is 4 months later, he's been praying, "in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, that there was wine before him." So, of course, Nehemiah being a cupbearer, this is an opportunity, right? "And I took up the wine, and I gave it to the king." And then he makes his point. "I had not ever been sad in his presence," which he obviously is now. "And the king says to him, 'Why is your face sad, though you're not sick?' This is nothing but sadness of heart." And then it says, Nehemiah, "Then I was very much afraid." In verse 3, "I said to the king, 'Let the king live forever. Why should my face not be sad when the city, the place of my father's tombs, lie desolate, and its gates have been consumed by fire?'" Okay. I'm just going to keep this stuff real practical for you guys, because I think this first point is Nehemiah, right? He's going to be used by God. He's going to be a part of the work that God's doing to restore people, just to do restoration in people's lives, right? And so this first point is important, where the king says to him, is like, why does your face look sad? Like, because I know that you're not sick. It's an important thing, because I was kind of reading about this. When you look at the language, it doesn't necessarily mean that the king's looking at him and saying, "You look sad. I feel bad for you." That's not really what's going on, because it says at the end of verse 2, Nehemiah was really afraid, because what the language is kind of like in the Hebrew, it's kind of ambiguous. It's like, why do you look all weird, bro? You know what I mean? I can tell that you're not sick. So what's the deal with your face? You know what I mean? Like, you look, so they translate it here like, "Oh, you look sad." Okay, but that's not necessarily what's like really being communicated here. Yes, go ahead. Yes. All right, he's reading how it's phrased in his Bible. Yes. Yes. So yes. And so this guy, Frankie, says, "Hey, why does your face look like that? This is not sickness. This is nothing but sorrow of heart." That's a translation. Like, it's translating from the original language, but like, and that's true. That's what I got too. This is nothing but sadness of heart. Same thing. But it says Nehemiah is afraid. But the point I'm making is, look, this is the point I'm making. I'm not going to like belabor the point, but the point is in the original language, there was a reason for Nehemiah to be freaked out, because he's saying, look, Nehemiah is a cupbearer. There's a point to him being cupbearer. He's protecting the king, okay? He's supposed to like test stuff. So the king's like, "You look a little weird, bro." You know what I mean? Like, what's the deal? And who knows what his tone was, but it's like, you're obviously not sick, so why do you look like this? Your face looks weird. I mean, so you can speculate and think, but I mean, obviously, like when people are going to do something bad, like for example, assassinate a king, they may look a little weird, you know what I mean? Because they're like, am I really going to go through with this or whatnot? So it's just vague and ambiguous. This is a translation of it, but it's just saying legitimately there was a reason for Nehemiah to be freaked out. Because when the king was saying something to him, he's like, I don't dig it. What's going on? Okay? And that's the starting point. Okay? And I just kind of want you guys to grab on that because, okay, Nehemiah responds a certain way. He responds a certain way in this situation. And this is kind of like one of the first practical takeaways that I want you guys to get from it is like, there's a reason for him to be afraid. There's going to be times that you encounter people and the situation is not always just like, it may not be like, oh, you look sick. Are you okay? Like they might be like, what's your deal, dude? You know what I mean? Like your job is this, like why you look like that? Okay. So in that situation though, Nehemiah, it says within the midst of this is like a fast moving situation. It says at verse 4, I prayed to God of heaven. And right before that, he's very strategic, though, in how he responds, okay? And this is kind of the point that I want you guys to, like, zero in on. A point that I want to talk to you guys about is, like, he's engaging, obviously, like a non-believer. This guy is not a believer, okay? He's an ancient Near Eastern king, and the way that he responds to him, though, is important. Like, he's just not like, oh, start denying stuff. He responds, and he admits, yeah, I am sad. And then he says, why would I not be sad? He says it twice right here. I want you guys to hear this. Why would I not be sad when the city, the place of my father's tombs, that's important, guys, underline that, my father's tombs, or whatever it says in your translation, lies desolate, and its gates have been consumed by fire. And then the king says, well, what's your request? And then he prays to God. Okay, he's opening a door here. And then he says, if it please the king, and your servant has found favor before you, send me to Judah. That's where that's where Jerusalem is. The city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it. Okay, so why is he saying the whole thing about my father's tombs twice? Because it's actually like an actual strategic thing. Number one, he's respectful. Like when he responds, he just says, when he responds to the king, he says, let the king live forever. He's respectful to him, and he doesn't deny it, but he acknowledges what the king's saying to him, okay? So he's not, something that I want you guys to take away is like, you don't have to be like, what is it? Like dishonest or whatever. Like when people ask you stuff, just, okay, look, I can be honest with you and respond. But he's also strategic in the way that he responds. He knows who he's talking to, and he knows what is going to, that this king will respond to in a certain way based on his culture, okay? Like who he is. And so the takeaway is like, in the ancient Near East, these kings, like one thing that was very important to them was preserving ancestral tombs, okay? So that's not really like a Jewish thing, but he understood, and that's why it's in there twice. He understands his audience, okay? And so I think that's just important is like when we're talking to unbelievers and people, hey, maybe we're asking a request or something like that, or even just engaging with people in a way where we're talking about God, like understand who they are and acknowledge like the place that they're coming from, the context. You don't just like try to just shove your thing down their throat, be like, this is the way it is or whatever. He's speaking his language in a way to achieve the purpose that he's trying to achieve. And so like, I want you to, if you want to turn over to, first of all, Matthew 10:16, just write this one down. It's a brief verse, and Jesus is talking in that one. Okay, this Bible's really thick. Okay, and 10:16 says, Jesus says, behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves, to be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves. So we need to understand like the context that we live in. And when he says like, when Jesus is saying shrewd as snakes, they're pretty strategic and guiled, you know what I mean? Like they know what's up. They pay attention. And then the other thing is though, be pure. And I think that ties into the second part where he's honest. You know what I mean? He's honest, but he understands how to speak in this guy's language. And so that's the thing that I want you guys to take away is just understand the language of people around you and don't just be like, I don't care. I'm a Christian and I don't want to understand them. Nehemiah wasn't like that. He understood the context in which he lived so that he could speak to people and engage with people, okay? And then another example of this is in the book of Acts. I bet Christian knows where I'm going. It's in Acts 17, and it starts at verse 16, and it's Paul the Apostle. Okay. It's another good example, okay? Like Nehemiah is this way. Guess who else was like this? Paul the Apostle was like this. It says he's in Athens, and there's a bunch of philosophers and stuff there. These guys are just like to hear themselves talk, and they like to just debate stuff and talk about stuff. And it says, while Paul was, Acts 17, verse 16. Now, while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was being provoked within him as he was observing the city full of idols. So he's being bothered by it. And it says, so he was reasoning in the synagogue with the Jews and the God-fearing Gentiles, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be present. And also some of the Epicureans and the Stoic philosophers were conversing with him. Some saying, what would this idle babbler wish to say? Others, he seems to be a proclaimer of strange deities because he's preaching Jesus because he was preaching Jesus in the resurrection. I like how he said idle babbler. See, look, I babble sometimes, but even Paul the Apostle was like that. But anyway, moving on. He was preaching the resurrection, and they were like, what is this guy trying to say? He's not very good at what he's saying. He's just babbling or something. And then it says, verse 19, they took him. They're like, let's inquire of this guy a little bit more, though. They took him, and they brought him to what is it called? The Areopagus? Areopagus, okay. Brought him to the Areopagus, we'll say that. But obviously, it's like a forum, right, where they have discussions. That's the point. Let's bring him there. And then they said, may we know what this new teaching is which you are proclaiming? For you are bringing some strange things to our ears, so we want to know what these things mean. Now, all the Athenians and the strangers visiting there used to spend their time in nothing other than telling or hearing something new. So this is like his sermon on Mars Hill. So Paul stood in the midst of these guys, and he said, men of Athens, I observe. Listen, okay, this is the point right here, guys. Verse 22, 23, context. Paul the Apostle also is trying to communicate to the people around him in a way that they can understand. So Paul stood up in the midst of them, and he said, look, I observe, because remember he's been looking around the town, that you are very religious in all aspects. So he's being respectful to him too. For while I was passing through and examining the objects of your worship, I found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. Therefore, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you, that the God who made the world and all things in it, since he is the Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made in hands. So he's using that, they have this inscription to the unknown God, and he's like, this is who I'm declaring to you. This unknown God that you guys know about, I'm going to tell you about him. And then he goes on and he tells about them. He tells about what Christ has done and who God is, how to be reconciled. But the point being is he's not missing the opportunity to speak their language. And that's the only thing that I want you guys to really just take away from this is when he talks, he's very strategic. And his point is to get through in a respectful way, but also a way that this guy can understand. And he understands, the Father's tombs, preserving the ancestral tombs, that's an important thing to him, and it catches his attention. And so then it says, when he hears this, the king says, what do you request? And so then the next thing is Nehemiah prays to the God of heaven. And so real simple point there, he knows in order to have favor in this situation, when you're talking to people in whatever context and all that, God has to bless it. He knows, God literally has to bless it. And it's pretty interesting. It's not just he knows he has to move on the heart of this guy, the king. And so he believes and he knows that God is capable of moving people's hearts, okay? And so he uses this moment to pray. But another important thing about this is like, did he like fall to his knees? He didn't. It wasn't like some big show, like, oh, like fall down in front of the king, like do a big show. He didn't. Do you know how he prayed? If you look at the language, it's just in his head. So that is an important thing that I want you guys to think about is like throughout your day, throughout your life, like when you're praying, I think a lot of us talk to ourselves in our heads. I do. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Okay. We all do. Okay. But I don't know if you guys already do this, but did you realize that you can literally be talking to God too? Yeah. Awesome. Love to hear it, guys. Just for those online, everyone's saying they do it all the time. That's awesome. And so Nehemiah did it too. And this is an example. Like, don't lose the opportunity to just like bring in the moment. So like an example for me in my life, kind of in a situation where I can kind of identify with this because the king was just like, what's the deal, dude? And like Nehemiah's afraid. There was a time in my life where we had this thing going on, and it was a legal thing that kind of like affected our family, and it was like in the workplace, okay? Yeah, and so I got like pulled into it because like I do legal stuff, right? So I'm like, hey, I'll help out in that aspect. But because of that, then all of a sudden I was like a target, and they like started to kind of retaliate against me because they're like, we need to take this guy out. I knew that's what they were thinking. It was like for real. They were literally trying to take me out. Take me out as far as cut me loose, like fire me, like write me up. And so what happened is there was this time where they were like, hey, you need to come into this office, and there was like high level people in there with like pens and notepads, And so I'm like, this is not good. So they're like, sit down. I'm like, okay. And so then they just like, and like my high up boss was there with like other people that were like, the people that were there were people that are like human resource level people, the people that are there when you're going to get fired, basically. And they're all like, okay, we're just taking notes to make sure this goes accordingly, but you're toast, bro. They pretend that they're there to like, hey, we just want to have a conversation, but they're like, okay, we're firing this guy. Let's just make sure it goes well. So I'm like, I'm done. I'm literally done. So that's what I'm thinking in my mind. But you know what? Like, this was like the first thing that came to mind. Like, I prayed in my head right away. And it's a good example because, like, for real, it flipped. The person that was in there was a very high level boss. I would be like basically a king, like levels above me. And I'm like, dude. And she just started like coming at me and like just throwing all the stuff at me, accusations and stuff. But I had prayed. And so that really like helped calm me. And I think that how Nehemiah responded like strategically, I did respond strategically. I listened to what they were saying to me. I'd write it down. And then I'd like think about it, and then I'd respond. But every time I was trying to respond, I was praying. I was always trying to be respectful in it, because you can just get like really adversarial, be like, everyone's coming at you. That's the knee-jerk reaction. That would be the knee-jerk reaction for Nehemiah. It's like, oh, I'm not sad, No, he didn't. He admitted it. And so I listened, I prayed with every response, and I could see it. Like, I could literally see it flipping, like coming back against them. Because then I like somehow, some way, not me, God, like I was able to like turn the tables on them. Like what they were doing to me, I was able to turn it back on them. And they saw it too. They knew. Like everyone knew. It was like, oh no. You know what I mean? Like we came in to ambush, but we actually got ambushed instead. It turned on them. But even in that, I was very strategic because the person that was coming against me, I knew they had like a lot of stuff going on in their life, and so I started praying for them. And it was weird because it opened up an opportunity for me to like start ministering to that person and talking to that person afterward. Because by being respectful, first of all, they were like, oh, they understood they were coming at me like in a bad way, but I was respectful. So that somehow created some sort of rapport to where they would talk to me. And then like, I had opportunities to talk to them, and in all those times that I would talk to them following up, I was still very cautious, but I prayed about it. Found out like that this person like had a son that was like alcoholic, struggling with stuff, like a lot of stuff going on. And through it all, like I was able to give her a Bible. I was able to pray for her on a regular basis and like actually give her like advice from the Word of God. But I feel that a big part of it was just because that it was. I know that initial interaction was part of it. So that's just an example, like real life. I mean, you guys are going to have real life things. You're going to have conversations with people that don't know Jesus. That's one context of speaking their language, but you're also going to have people that come against you literally. It's so important to pray and to be respectful, but also be strategic, because I was pretty strategic in the way that I responded and stuff, but it was just by like the grace of God. And Nehemiah was strategic. So think about that. So then the next thing is we're going to keep moving on here. Again, he just repeats at verse 5 after he prayed, I said to the king, if it please you and your servant has found favor, because the king asked, what do you want? Send me to Judah. This is pretty crazy. To the city of my father's tombs, so I can rebuild it. And so that the king's like, okay, I'll do that. So the king is sitting next to the queen, verse 6, beside him. And then he says, okay, well, how long are you going to be gone? And when will you return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I gave him a definite time. So number one, look, going back to the fact that he's been praying, he gave him a definite time. So like Hannah said, you said God's strategic. Got it? Yeah, exactly. Yes. So Hannah, during her prayer for the people that are alive, said, you know who's strategic? God's strategic. He is strategic. And right here, but I think the point is, guys, is like when you're praying about things and you feel like God put stuff on your heart, exercise this gift or step out in this, you don't just pray about it like in ambiguity. It's like, oh, Lord, if it's your will, this. And then you're like, yeah, God wills this or whatever. But then you're never like executing and following through and like making plans. Like, guess what? Nehemiah was like literally brainstorming this stuff. He's brainstorming this stuff with God. Otherwise, he would not have been able to give an answer like this. How can you give an answer with a definite time if you're not literally processing this stuff and brainstorming this stuff? So there's going to be times where God calls you to do things in life as a part of the work of his restoration. Like in your own life, hey, I want you feel it on your heart. See, because in Nehemiah 1, it said God put this thing on his heart. I want you to deal with this. But it's not just like vague, like, oh, God, deliver me from this sin that's oppressing me. And then that's it, you know what I mean? But it's like, you literally have to like, okay, how? Like, how are you literally going to like get out of it? Because you know what? A lot of that stuff has to do with patterns. So guess what? Maybe God's going to like change patterns in your life. You know what I mean? Like, hello. And so like start processing like, okay, wait, if God's going to lead me out of this, then how is he going to lead me out of it? Like what patterns need to be broken if it's an area of sin, an obstacle, stronghold? Or maybe he's going to have you do something like play music, like Hannah. Like there was for real. I was thinking about that when Hannah was up here singing. I'm like, wow, man, her voice has like come so far, She's all there shaking. Yeah, don't pay attention to me. But like, no, the point, it's a very good example because I'm like, wow, things that I was thinking is like her voice has come so far. She can like literally like, play some chords while she's singing, when she's like off key or whatever, she can get it back on key and she doesn't like just wig out and be like, I'm out of here, bro. Cause like some people just be like, oh, I failed and like quit. She doesn't, you know what I mean? And so like, but the point I'm making is God put a burden on her heart, right? Obviously. And so then she started to actually act upon it, like strategically, like, oh, I got to learn chords. I got to learn how to strum the guitar. I got to learn vocals. I got to learn how to sing. And I also need to be not afraid of my voice. That's another thing, right? Where she's like, ah, that kind of stuff, Like, I can't do that kind of stuff. But, like, that takes guts, you know what I mean? So point being is, like, God will call you to specific things. Maybe he's going to call you to, like, be an evangelist or something like that. It's not just like vague stuff. In Timothy, like 1st or 2nd Timothy, Paul tells Timothy like to stir up the gift, the things that he's called him to do and to be active in doing those things. So Nehemiah, obviously, as he was praying about it, was being interactive with God, engaging with God, and asking God to be like, okay, if this is your plan, this is your purpose, how is it going to happen? Because obviously the opportunity is going to come up for me to do it. And then verse 7, so he gave him a definite time, verse 6. Verse 7, you see why I only did 9 verses tonight. Verse 7, and I said to the king, also, if it please the king, will you also give me some letters to be given for the governors of the provinces beyond the river, that they may allow me to pass through until I come to Judah? That's another thing. Protection. He asked for protection. And that kind of ties into the intro. I said, we need to know the enemy, our adversary. It says, and just write this one down. 1 Peter 5:8 kind of connects with that little passage there in Nehemiah 2:7, because in 1 Peter 5:8 it says, be sober-minded, watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So Nehemiah is not naive to that fact. He already knows there's going to be opposition. And I think Nehemiah is probably a little bit older than some of you guys in here, because some of you guys are a little bit young, 13, 9. How old are you, buddy? 8. Whoa. Okay, so you're not as old as Nehemiah. I think he's older than 8. But the point being is look, at 9, okay. I think he's older than 9, probably older than 13 too. But because he can he's supposed to deflect poison for the king, so I don't think he has an 8 or a 9-year-old doing it. But the point being is he's got the point I'm making, guys, is he's got a little bit of experience in life that you will gain in life. As you grow and you walk with God, you're going to learn things about the adversary. And so there's going to be times that you guys bump up against the enemy and you don't always do it well, But God, it says 7 times we fall down or whatnot, but we get back up because God is faithful. A man that walks with God just gets back up. That's the thing. That's in Proverbs. So you know what that means? There's going to be times that you get knocked on your butt. But learn from those times. Nehemiah did, I can tell you, because he wouldn't have asked for that if he hadn't learned. The point I'm making is he understood there's going to be opposition, and one way he's going to do it is through people. And he knew, hey, when I go through here, I already know that there's probably some guys out there that are actual governors and rulers, high up people. They're going to oppose me, man. And right now is an opportunity for me to ask the law of the land just for the letter, so that when those guys do what they're going to do, what I already know they're going to do, because I understand the enemy, that he works through people, I can just be what's up? Here's a letter, dude. I got authority to pass through here. So he asked for these letters of protection because he understood he was going to hit opposition. And this is kind of a little point, but it's we got letters too. You know what I mean? A lot of them in the New Testament. They are literally information, protection against the enemy, to understand him and to actually how we oppose him according to the power of God, the way that God works against him. So we all got letters, for real, legit. Letters of authority from the Word of God. But you're gonna learn through time. So I just want to encourage you guys, you're gonna get knocked on your butt sometimes. It's really gonna happen. In the Christian life, there's gonna be times where the enemy sweeps your feet out from underneath you. Okay, but get back up and learn from it. He's not gonna do that again, bro. I'm gonna kick his shin and break it in half or something like that to block him. Okay, moving on, guys. Verse 8. So he also asks for provision. This is the last thing. He's pretty bold here. And there's going to be a little point that I want to make here, but Nehemiah asked for provision. And so he also asked the king, he asked for protection. Now he's asking for provision. He says, will you give me a letter to Asa, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the fortress, which is by the temple. Look, he knows this too. The fortress, which is by the temple, for the wall of the city, and for the house which I will go. And the king granted them to me. Well, I'm going to read this again, but the king granted them to me because the good hand of God was upon me. But this point about provision, he just straight up asked the king, hey, will you give me this stuff? But within the midst of that, he knows what he's asking for too. It goes back to that point is he's been thinking about this, praying about this, and he understands what to ask for, because he's I need beams for this wall by the fortress. Also, I need a place to live, so I'm going to need beams for that. But he's thought about it, you know what I mean? He's not just, and he's there's a strategy, there's a intentionality to it. Like if he's like that, we should all be like that in our prayer life, okay? That's all I'm saying is like think things through, but also there's this aspect of him being bold. And I just want to bring this to your guys' attention because I guess because talking about experience and time, I'm 46, right? So I've been alive for 46 years, yeah. So meaning I've probably seen a little bit more than an 8-year-old, just a little bit. And so there's different, like one thing you'll see as you go along in life, when people walk with God, they have different ways, approaching God. Here, Nehemiah had a situation where the king said, this door of opportunity opened, and the king's like, what do you want? What do you need? And he's literally like, this is what I need. This. And also, will you just give me a bunch of stuff so I can build it too? And also, can I have like this much time off from work? And just send me there. And you'll see coming up, the king sends like horses and army people with him to protect him too. So he's like, hooks him up. But Nehemiah asked, okay? But then there's another example right in another book right before this in Ezra. And it says this in Ezra 8, because this is a part of where they're rebuilding the temple, a different aspect of the project that was going on. And it says this. It says in Ezra 8:21. It's a little bit different situation because Ezra said in this context when he was talking to Artaxerxes, because it says, look, chapter 8 of Ezra, now these are the heads of their fathers, the household, blah, 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 in the reign of Artaxerxes. Okay, so, but Ezra, because he was praying, he was pretty bold. And he was like, hey, look, dude, to the king. Probably more respectful than that, but look, dude, we don't need you. Like, God will provide. It doesn't matter, because it says in Ezra 8:21, he says, I proclaimed a fast there at the rivers of Ahav, that we might humble ourselves before God to seek from him a safe journey for us, our little ones, our kids, and our possessions. And then it says, for I was ashamed to request from the king troops and horsemen to protect us from the enemy on the way, because we'd said to the king, the hand of our God is favorably disposed to all who seek him, but his power and his anger are against all those who forsake him. So we fasted and we sought our God concerning this matter, and he listened to our entreaty. And so God gives them what they need. But the point being is it's just different styles. That's all I want to point out. There's different styles. Like Ezra's like, dude, we don't need you. Like, we do not need you, okay? Watch the power of God. But it doesn't always have to be that way. You know what I mean? That's the point I'm making, is some people just want to spiritualize stuff and be like, oh, yeah, we just got to pray, and if God's going to do it, he'll provide. Okay, but in Nehemiah's situation, literally the king's like, what do you want? He's like, okay, this. He wasn't ashamed to ask for it. So there's just different styles and different ways. Don't get locked into something. Just know both of these guys, Ezra and Nehemiah, all came down to this last point. And the king granted to me because the good hand of God was with me. So that's the bottom line. He prayed to God, and he understood that the things that was given to him was because of the good hand of God being upon it. Ezra understood it in a bold, powerful way. I don't have to ask for anything. God will give it to us. And here, Nehemiah, same thing. Don't get locked into just some weird spirituality, it's got to be like this or that. It's not like that. And then verse 9, but it is like God, you're asking God, and he's providing. That's the foundation. That's the takeaway. Then it says, verse 9, then I came to the governors of the provinces beyond the river, and I gave them the king's letter. Now the king had sent me with officers of the army and horsemen. See, look, he had all the stuff that Ezra didn't want to ask for. The king gave it to him also. And then I'm just going to read this next verse, because we're going to go into this next week. But it's kind of a sneak peek, and it also ties into understanding the enemy. When Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite official, heard about it, it was very displeasing to them that someone had come to seek the welfare of the sons of Israel. So that's for next week, guys.